Welcome to the Web Platform Podcast, a developer discussion that dives deep into all things web. We discuss topics relevant to developing for the modern web and the web platform of today, tomorrow, and beyond.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 166 of the Web Platform Podcast. We're really excited today to be talking about Samsung Internet, the second most popular browser on Android devices that you may or may not have heard about. It's cool, invisible giant. And we're excited about we're even more excited to host Ada Rose Cannon. She's a developer advocate at Samsung for the Samsung Internet browser. And before we get into that, we're going to hear about what's new in the web today. I'm going to pass it over to Leon.
Thank you, Amal. So this week we've got a new release of Parcel.js, which is the blazing fast web application bundler. And this release, 1.9.5, has got many fixes and improvements, such as support for Node 10, logger improvements, etc. TypeScript 3.0 RC has just been released, so this release includes a whole host of new goodness such as support for default props in JSX, a new top type called unknown, and loads of new features around tuple types. And there's also a new Webpack feature release, which includes WebAssembly support, which is very exciting, and that's WebAssembly support for the Electron renderer target, alongside some bug fixes and deprecations, so check out the link to find out more. And once again, Justin has been very busy, making it easy for us to run perf tests with Lighthouse within VS Code. So I recommend you go and check out the article he's posted about that particular bit of work he's been doing. And that's everything from me for this week in web. Thank you, Amal.
All right, Leon. Great to know that nothing's broken on the web today. So Ada, welcome. We're really excited to have you on our show. Could you tell us a bit about yourself and your role at Samsung?
Cool. At Samsung, I'm a developer advocate. It's my goal to go around and let people know that Samsung Internet exists. Try and get feedback from developers to bring into our browser so we can work out what are the things that people are really interested in, that it's key for us to get into our next major releases. And find out any issues people are having which are preventing them from building cool websites to work on the browser. That's pretty much what I do, but usually lots of speaking at conferences and going around and meeting awesome people, so it's a pretty fun job.
Yeah, it sounds like a great gig. And Samsung is just also an extremely cool company, I'm sure, to work for. I mean, I think it's the pioneer of our generation in terms of hardware and mobile technology. You're just always doing really cool stuff and pushing the web experiences and user experiences forward. So could you tell us a little bit about how Samsung Internet came to be, and it's, from my understanding, only a mobile browser, so it's only available on mobile devices. Is that correct?
Yes, it's kind of one of those things that's 90% correct. So although it's a mobile-only browser, for devices which run Android but are on a laptop, Chromebooks can run Samsung Internet now, works pretty well. And there's you get this dock called DeX, and if you put your Samsung phone into that, it gives you a full desktop experience. So we kind of behave like a desktop browser in that as well. We do have this kind of desktop mode, but it's still only on devices which run Android software. Sorry, carry on. I forgot what you...
Yeah. Oh, no, go ahead, please.
I forgot the question.
Oh, okay. It was a long question. So how did Samsung Internet come to be? Was this a magical browser that was created in Korea and shipped, or was it a fork of an open, popular open source browser framework?
So for the first few versions of Samsung, we were this was slightly before my time. So I may get this wrong, but I think we were based upon the Android browser. And then from Samsung Internet 4 onwards is when we when they really started getting engaged with the community. They started the developer advocacy team, and that's when it moved over to becoming a fork of Chromium instead. So we're not just like a wrapper around the Chromium browser. We're like a full separate fork where for each major release of our browser, we pick a Chrome version and we backport all the patches, and sometimes we'll bring in some additional features which people are really excited about. So, for example, we landed in CSS Grid a version earlier than we would have done, but because developers were really clamoring for it, and we worked really hard to make sure that was part of the browser. We also have our own patches for integrating with some of the additional hardware features in Samsung devices. So, for example, some of the biometric security features and some of the dealing with some of the software stuff as well. So, like Bixby support and some stuff in the Samsung ecosystem. But yeah, we also have a secondary browser on Samsung Internet for Gear VR, which is a slightly separate browser that runs in the virtual reality headset and works with the WebVR 1.1 APIs to do virtual reality in the web, and quite performantly, it's pretty good.
So I think a pretty obvious question at this point is kind of why. So it's very interesting to hear that it is a fork of Chromium. With that, can you give us a little context as to maybe why? Like, why did Samsung create its own browser? Why not just use Chrome?
So primarily it's because Samsung is a hardware manufacturer as well as a software manufacturer. It allowed them to get the most out of the browser than they would otherwise. So we can do stuff like optimize the power usage, so we get slightly longer usage using Samsung Internet on a Samsung device than you would just using Chrome. And we can hook into the additional hardware features. So that's pretty much the reasons why, because I think the goal of a lot of Samsung software is to they kind of want to give better than the stock experience. And I know a lot of people don't like a lot of the Samsung software that comes with the phone. So I'm going a bit off company line there, but I'm just being honest.
You're fine.
But Samsung Internet it seems to be like one of the ones where people actually like it over the Google one, like over Google Chrome. So that kind of makes me happy. We've had some really positive feedback about it. Now it's available on all Android devices, because that was only a recent thing. It's only about a year ago when it became available for any Android device.
So with that, does Samsung Internet support progressive web app technologies?
Yeah, that's actually so progressive web apps is one of our core features we really want to focus on. So right now our core goals are progressive web apps, web Bluetooth, web payments, and IoT. And progressive web apps was our big push for when we released version 4.4, where we were trying to push the boat out and try and stay ahead a bit. So yeah, we've supported progressive web apps since I joined Samsung. So so basically as long as Chrome has been doing it, so if we it's one of the things where we keep trying to stay on par. There are a few features where we try and go ahead. So one thing we've been experimenting with and it's been working really well, and we keep evolving it, is ambient badging. So if you go onto a progressive web app website on your phone, we do a very subtle badge in the URL bar. So if the user then clicks that badge, they can install it straight to their desktop. So it's a subtle way of alerting the user, hey, if you want to keep this, it's available, but without being intrusive. So we do a few things like that. And I'd like to think that progressive web apps is going to be one of the things which we stay really proud of for a long time.
That sounds incredible. And so progressive web apps are built on a set of modern web standards. And I'm curious how Samsung manages that process, like where, is your rate of innovation kind of limited to, Chromium? How are you able to release features before Chromium? I guess how does that work?
Um, so we have some issues keeping up with Chrome because like we haven't got the same resources as Google. So we're like a smaller browser team, and because we're a fork, we have to basically stick a pin in a version several months beforehand and start working to pull in all the patches into Samsung Internet. So we usually end up running like about 8 versions behind Google Chrome. Like the current stable version of Samsung Internet is based on Chromium 59. And I think the current Chromium stable is 68, 69. Sorry, I use Firefox. I haven't got a Chrome to take a look. So yeah, we're not. So we do run like a little bit behind, which is a shame. But some features we do end up releasing them before they would be available in the equivalent version of Chrome. CSS Grid and Web Bluetooth are the two that come to mind.
So with the process of development for the Samsung Internet, is there plans to speed that up to get to, because right now Chrome and Firefox and most of them are on like 3-month cycles, and if you look at Can I Use, usually support for Evergreen goes back 2 versions, and I know from my own personal experience developing applications that are embedded in Android devices, a lot of times you'll have a lot of issues that are like one-offs for that particular version. So is there plans to improve that process in the near term?
So we've definitely been speeding up support as time's gone on. So it used to be that a new version of Samsung Internet would only come out with new versions of devices, and that Samsung Internet would be tied to the hardware. And that was from version 4 onwards. That was like the thing that couldn't be anymore. Like it was unacceptable for a web browser to not be evergreen. So I know it seems like such a minor thing, but for us it's quite a big deal that we're no longer tied to specific like handset releases. That's like often not the way software's done inside Samsung. So that's kind of like a big deal for us. So the releases are generally getting faster, but they're probably not going to speed up to the level Chrome of the rate which Chrome releases. That's just a bit beyond us right now, I think.
I think
but generally,
it's expected though. I'm sorry. I think it's to be expected though, because like you said, you don't have those resources that Google has, but to get to the point where it's a few versions back, maybe like with JavaScript, right? The all of the standards, it took forever. It took like 10 years to get the one version of JavaScript, and then it improved slowly over time. So I was just curious, like the plans for Samsung, because I know every company has their own internal struggles with this sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I understand. Like we do get that complaint a lot. Like there are a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I want to use like the star operator right now," or like it's absolutely imperative that I use JavaScript imports and ES modules in my app. And I'm like, and it would be really nice if we could have all these like really super new features in the browser. But unfortunately, all I can say is like progressive enhancement is still really important, and like you should make sure what you build works well, like everywhere. I mean, like we're not so far behind. I mean, if you look at the stuff that's in Samsung, the stable version of Samsung Internet, it's only like some of the really, really new stuff we don't have at the moment. Like we have web components, we've got Houdini Paint. We have some of the other new stuff I've been playing with recently. We've got like async await and some of the newer ES stuff. But what we don't have is like JavaScript import yet. But I think this is stuff which developers aren't using right now in a wide scope anyway. And I don't think developers should be waiting on, developers shouldn't be waiting on Samsung Internet before they start using these cool new features. I mean, if they start building with them now, by the time they release a project with them, we're going to have it in our browser. And if they don't, they probably should build it with progressive enhancement anyway, so it still works on browsers like IE 11 and Safari and stuff. So, I always like to say, not just because I work for Samsung, but I think it's important for the web in general. But I think progressive enhancement is the strongest power we have for the web, because if bits of our websites, if we expect features not to be available and have a sensible fallback instead, then the web is going to be robust, not just for when it works on a website, not when someone loads your website on a browser that's missing the feature you expect, but for when that feature has been turned off by a user, or just simply the network has failed and your JavaScript file hasn't arrived. So yeah, it's
I'm sorry. I'm on it.
I was just agreeing with
interrupting train. Okay.
No, I have a problem of just pausing and long gaps and then saying nothing, just making noises.
Oh, that's okay. No worries. So I couldn't agree with you more, Ada. I think progressive enhancement is definitely, I don't see that really ever changing as the web and standards continue to evolve. Unfortunately, we have tools like Babel, and we have Babel has this awesome plugin called BabelEnv, where you can kind of say, okay, I'm supporting these browsers and I'm up to these versions, and it'll only transpile what it needs to. And so
that's really cool.
So I think a follow-up task for me after this is to check to see if Samsung is supported, and I think pretty sure it is. But it would be, so developers can only transpile the bits that are not supported yet, which definitely greatly reduces the payload size and whatnot, which is great. But I think before we kind of segue into our next topic, I'm curious on this maintenance burden that the team now has, because you have this forking and syncing process, and you're kind of anchoring to a specific version of Chromium. So I'm curious if Samsung is going to pull a move like Google did when they forked WebKit and just it became Blink, right? So do you ever see that happening where you just kind of say, okay, that's it, we're gonna start our own we're gonna have our own browser that's based off of this fork, and we're no longer going to continue this syncing process because it's cumbersome, or it's extra maintenance,
that would be really, really cool. It's the kind of thing where I don't see that happening in the near future. I've certainly heard no plans about it. But the nice thing about working with Samsung is that the corporate structure is one such they can turn on a dime, and I've seen amazing product changing decisions happen essentially overnight. And it's amazing how fast they can move, and how fast they can make decisions. So, if something like this was to happen, I would be okay, that's it'll take me by surprise, but I'd have to move on. But it definitely, it wouldn't be off the table, because stuff when we decided to go from a hardware-specific release browser to one that's an evergreen browser. Like that seemed to be a very like quick decision. And same when it came to releasing for all Android devices. Initially, it was like, oh yeah, we'll do a beta test, and then it was like, yeah, beta test is fine, we're going to do it. So decisions like that often happen like kind of quickly, which is kind of exciting because often we'll get told something, we'll be like, oh wow, okay, this changes everything. Need to like rewrite some blog posts and stuff. So yeah, but that would be really cool though. But yeah.
I have a Samsung dream, right? So I have a Samsung internet dream. Oh, that's great. And so I think we kind of highlighted on a point that I think is really one that I need some amplifying here, which is that Samsung Internet, although that's the the name Samsung is in the browser, it's not limited to Samsung devices anymore. So any Android device can run can you can go to the Play Store and just download it, and like that's huge. And so I'm wondering, is there a name change that's coming? Is there like a branding? Are we going to come up? Like is there going to be like
it's
a full name
something
from now on?
It's something that gets discussed a lot because the name of the browser is just Internet, which isn't like a super descriptive name. Like I mean, it does what it says on the tin. Well, it's World Wide Web rather than Internet, but like yeah, it's like. And so every now and then the discussion does come up for whether we should rename the browser or not. And each time we end up settling on like, no, we shouldn't rename the browser because we've like consistent marketing behind it, and that's how it's being used all over the place. So there's no plans to rename it yet. I mean, it's like taken long enough to get Samsung Internet separated out from Chrome in Google Analytics and stuff. So like if we were to rename it, I couldn't imagine how long it would take for us to get renamed across all of the places where we're mentioned.
I would think the marketing team would just be like happy that it's named Samsung Internet, because then people would be like, oh, Samsung is the internet.
Wait, Samsung isn't the internet? Just kidding. All right.
So I actually have a question that's kind of related to some of the stuff that you were just talking about, Ada, with being able to like turn on a dime and that kind of stuff, which is I'd say pretty unique for a company the size of Samsung. And I'm curious how that impacts decision making for what features to work on next. I'm specifically thinking about web platform features, like you just mentioned Houdini, which I kind of can't believe that Samsung Internet Browser supports. Now, I'm curious what the decision making process looks like, or at least what insight you.
Oh no, shoot! I just remembered we don't support Paint yet. Damn it! Sorry, someone showed me a demo of Paint working. That was Houdini Paint working via the polyfill.
Spoilers.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's totally fine. But the point is that it's being worked on, and things like that are being looked.
Well, it's a combination of like, so some things we'll get as a matter of course just by sticking a pin in the version of Chrome which has it. And there are some things which we'll develop additionally ourselves, or at least like pull them in and like work on them a bit further to get it like to the point where we can release in that version of the browser. And how we decide to work on is like has lots of comes from lots of influences. So part of it is, does it align with like Samsung's goals? So like Samsung is really big into IoT right now, so anything like IoT related is like really like yay, good for the browser. So stuff like Web Bluetooth and physical web, and we even have a QR code reader built into the browser. So anything that can help with physical web stuff and IoT is something which we really prioritize. If there's something which we think developers are going to find really important, that's something we prioritize. So, for example, CSS Grid pretty much landed almost entirely in March last year. There was a big concerted effort across a lot of the browsers to make sure it went out. But the in a very small window of time. Unfortunately, the major version of Chrome we had put our pin in to that we were working on developing our browser toward for the next major release was a version before Chrome released CSS Grid. So what we did, we put lots of extra effort in to make sure that CSS Grid could land in our major version, because if we didn't, it would then be like another release cycle until we got CSS Grid out there. And CSS Grid was so important to developers for like making it much easier to build websites that we just felt it was really important to get it out there. And that was one of the features which developers had kept asking us about again and again. So we kind of had to make it happen. So it's a combination of like internal drive and then feedback from the community. And that's kind of what my job is as a developer advocate, to give that feedback to the company and say, they're really clamoring for this, we should really work on it.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that like you get stuff like the web components probably you got, from Chrome, but what I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. What do you have any like vendor prefixes for experimental features? Do you have like flags that are specific, not like from Chromium, but something that you do extra on top that we should be concerned with?
We don't have any vendor prefixes.
Yay.
I think everyone in our team is pretty anti-vendor prefixes in general. We do have a separate flags page. I can't remember what's on it right now because that's my phone in the other room, so it wouldn't ring during the podcast, so I can't check. But we do have an extra experimental flags page where you can turn on experimental features. But that's but like experimental stuff wise, that's just pretty much it. We don't have aside from the beta, we don't expose much like early release stuff to like to the public. But we do often have a beta version going for the next release. Like there isn't right now. Like currently the Samsung Internet beta in the Chrome store is at the same place as the normal Samsung Internet release. But there should be hopefully a new beta coming out soon, so you can try out new stuff in that one.
That's super cool. So we're gonna try to segue into talking about the hardware integration. We've got a lot to talk about. So Samsung has a ton of innovation in the VR space, even with mobile devices. I think they're the first to do fingerprint sensors, and there's a lot of support around just even user security and privacy with biometrics. And so I'm curious how, I guess, how does Samsung Internet play into the larger scheme of the hardware innovations for Samsung?
I think it largely comes from us being like one of the like top level apps on the device. Like it's one of the ones that Samsung really care about. So if there's some new hardware feature which Samsung is really proud of and wants to do well, then there'll be some kind of integration for it in the browser. So there's Samsung Pay integration. We have support for the biometric authentication. Like we try to like really take advantage of the hardware where we can. It's really bad. I can't actually like I'm trying to think of stuff that jumps to mind. Bixby support.
Well, I guess
so
how about VR gear in specific? Because that's
so we have so we have a separate browser for Gear VR. So I notice it has like a different. So although we try and keep it seamless between, so if you open up a web page on Samsung Internet and put it in the headset, it will open up Samsung Internet for Gear VR on the same web page to kind of give a seamless experience. But it is a separate browser with a separate executable. So yeah, we try and push for like having good web VR support in there. So that's like the standard which we're really focused on in that browser in particular. So we've got our performance in there really good, and we try and like push the browser platform in there just to like get the user interface really nice and make it like a good experience to browse the internet in virtual reality. But yeah, that's like a really cool feature, like the VR support.
That's really it's for those of you who haven't gotten a chance to see a demo of Gear VR, I highly recommend it. I'm curious, I'm very pro web. I make fun of native mobile development all the time. I apologize if that's breaking any code of conduct, but it's all in good fun. But so why the decision to it's a very strategic decision to like use web-based technologies, but I'm curious why they didn't go with like just a full native experience. I mean, definitely there's some forethought, I think, behind that decision. I'm curious if you have any insight into that.
Well, you can develop like native apps with Samsung Internet, but I think there is definitely a strong vision of like the web being a valid platform for apps and VR for VR and for apps in general. Because that's one of the reasons why we have a strong push behind progressive web apps. Like, we don't have a horse in the App Store race. Like, sure, we have a Samsung store, but like, it's not it's not a big priority is to say the App Store is for Apple or the Play Store is for Google. So like, we definitely have like, the progressive web apps are important. And then for VR as well, like a VR app can run into the hundreds of megabytes. But if you just want to have a quick 2-minute experience where the user can drop in, do something, and leave again, getting them to download an app to try and view your 2-minute like advert or just experience is very, very challenging. So if you can just send them the URL and have them click on a button on the page and then be in VR, then that's incredibly powerful for engagement for virtual reality as a whole. And I think like, I do a lot of work with WebXR, and like, which is like the umbrella term for like web VR and AR and MR. So I'm like incredibly invested in the future of XR on the web. And I really think the power of it lies in the ability to load it up and throw it away without thinking about it. Because like the one thing which the one thing that people are building for VR right now in native is video games. And the best use for VR on the web is for everything apart from video games. So there's like a real a real neat like symbiosis going on there, because like the stuff, like when you buy a game, it's usually expensive. You're willing to take a long time to download it and set aside large amounts of time to set it up and enjoy it. Whereas if you just want to view a 360 video, or you want to view or you want to look around a showroom in a store in virtual reality, or you want to see a pair of shoes on the table in front of you in augmented reality, you don't want to have to download an entire app just to do that, because you probably don't care that much. Whereas if you can go to the web page and have it just there already in front of you in your browser, then that's incredibly powerful for getting people engaged with AR and VR content.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. That's the power of the web, that it's, the operating system device is kind of irrelevant, and it gives you, native apps, might have slight performance uh, advantages, but web apps, but they don't have the reach of the web, right? And so combining the reach of the web with the power of native is really kind of what we're moving towards with progressive web apps and all these cool new native web primitives. And so I'm really excited about that. So I'm curious, like, if Samsung is kind of also taking some leadership in the IoT standards, with kind of pushing more web like base standards with how IoT devices kind of hook into the browser.
So it's really annoying because like I'm not the best person to speak to about this, and and annoyingly the team which be the best people to speak to sit next to me at work, because we are definitely involved in IoT and the web. We are like Samsung get very strongly involved in open source projects, and it's great to see like web-based open source IoT work happening within Samsung. Like it makes me like I'm definitely one of those like IoT skeptics. Like I have nothing smart in my house. And it's just seeing it happen in the open and being web-based is kind of making me think like, perhaps maybe this is something I could actually get involved with, because now I trust the web, I trust open source. We are definitely getting involved. I wish I could tell you the names of the projects we were involved with, which is frustrating me a lot. Like we do a lot of open source work though. Like for the browser in particular, we mostly contribute to Chromium. I put a link in the resources section to our to some of our Chromium patches and stuff, so people can see what we're up to. Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't give you like a more detailed answer.
Oh no, that was no. We're just gonna have to have that team on the show, and we'll talk about it then. So you can also be a part of that conversation. And so just you're being very humble about Samsung's contributions to Chromium, because I think you're the second largest contributor after Google, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So that's pretty huge. Yeah.
So why do you think most people, especially developers and technology product managers, have never heard of SI or even integrated it into their automated testing?
So I think partly it's because for a long time, most analytics companies just lumped us in with Chrome. Like they saw the Chrome parts of the user agent string and just put us in there without a second thought. And it's only in very recent times they started to separate us out. So like a few months back even, we had developers being surprised that like, oh my God, a new browser has just appeared and stolen a huge chunk of Chrome's market share. And it's like, it's not that we just appeared, it's just that Google Analytics started to separate us out.
Okay.
So we're kind of just like a little bit quiet, and we're trying to like make sure we're involved in places where developers go to look to see what's happening in the web space. So we work closely with Mozilla on MDN to make sure that we have our browser has correct information in the Mozilla Developer Network documentation.
They're working with Microsoft too now,
we're broken out.
So for MDN?
I think so. Like we're definitely like contributing a bit to SonarWall, which is a Microsoft project. So yeah, like we're trying to get listed like there. We've been broken out in Stat Counter now, so like you can see our stats in Stat Counter. So we're just trying to. Oh, and also Can I Use as well. So we're just trying to be seen in places where developers go to look, because we're not an insignificant market share. So I think it's important that like they at least test on our devices. And I think now, as of very recently, we should be able to start working with what's the name of it? The thing you use to make web browsers go automatically.
Headless.
Not Selenium.
Like
no, not headless.
WebDriver.
Like
Yeah,
WebDriver. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think someone just did. Is it web page test? So we're now a browser you can select on web page test as well.
That's awesome.
So Galaxy S5 Samsung Internet. So you can now test us on web page test as well. So even if you only have iOS smartphones in your office and you don't have any Androids at all, you can still test your website on us using web page test, just to make sure everything still works as expected. But if you do have Android testing devices, just install Samsung Internet alongside Chrome and just like make sure we test there as well. Because usually whenever I make something, if I test it in Chrome, and if it works in Chrome, then it probably works in Samsung Internet. But occasionally there'll be a few things where I'm relying on something from a very, very recent version of Chrome that hasn't made it across, and obviously unexpected to happen. So it's important to test. But I have to say, one thing I've been impressed with recently is just how well, in general. Because I remember when I first started development, I would build something in, and test it in, and it would look totally different in Netscape and Internet Explorer. There would be no, and even up until maybe 2012, 2013, there was still if I built something in Firefox or Chrome, I couldn't expect it to work in Safari or vice versa. And it's weird then to the point now where if I build something in Firefox and if I'm not using anything totally cutting edge, or if I'm using polyfills, it usually works in Safari and Chrome and on the mobile browsers, without too much tweaking. Often I'll build a demo, a one-off in an hour or something, and tweet it out there, and then someone will show it to me working on a browser which I didn't even consider testing it on. So I just love to see how all the evergreen browsers are just they're working together really well these days.
Oh man, people that are just starting into web development now will have no idea. That thing that you just described, absolutely. I haven't even been doing this that long, but I just back to IE8 or something like that, and now, there's kind of an expectation that it works. It's just good. I trust that this is going to behave the same way in one browser to another. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's the interop story, and we're, users are very lucky to be in a time where I think browsers are competing for speed and security, and they're actually all working together on making sure that they're all testing their implementations of the same spec, right? And so definitely exciting things, and I hope that we can talk about web interop a bit later in the show. I just wanted to touch on oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, that's one of the things that makes me really happy and excited to be working for a web browser and in the web. The friendly rivalry between the browsers, we're always trying to one-up each other by supporting more functionality from the standards, and trying to be faster and more battery efficient, and be more wonderful. But then we're also all the browser manufacturers are very friendly with each other, and really get on, and like we're not at each other. We're not like Apple versus Android developers who are at each other's throats. We're very much like, yeah, like we're all buddies. We're all working towards the goal of a strong, healthy web. And I think that's beautiful.
It's certainly fun for us to watch.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of just take a step back to, I think, an important point that you guys were making earlier regarding the awareness of Samsung Internet in the testing cycles and just development cycles for people developing for the web. And I think there's a couple. Like, we're at this kind of very interesting time, I think, in web history, where the pivot it's after the pivot of, I think, more people accessing the web on mobile devices, right? And I think this concept of like a mobile only browser, I think it's something that I think is not something that's propagated really throughout. It's not something that's like saturated and like I think widely acknowledged in like all technology companies, right? And I think we think not every company is Google or Facebook. There's publishing companies that are transitioning into digital companies, and when you're looking at like browser compat or what types of features that browsers are supporting, you go to sites like Can I Use? For a long time it was just primarily just web browsers, and so I think there's a lot of education and there's opportunity for education and advocacy around, hey, like mobile only browsers exist. They're a thing, and in many parts of the world they're the only access to the internet. And so there's a lot of room there to like make sure that we're that I think we start dropping we kind of have to start dropping this mobile prefix. Like, it's not mobile web. It's, you don't say color TV. It's just TV.
Web. Yeah.
It's just the web. And I think it's about where it's being accessed, and so.
Yeah. I still find it very shocking that people still think of the web as a desktop first medium. Like, it's like responsive design has been such a huge topic for so long now, as like something you should do as common practice. And you still get people thinking like, oh yeah, there are two types of browsers. There's desktop browsers and mobile browsers. But they're definitely totally different things on different platforms. But then we start seeing weird stuff. So like Samsung Internet is a mobile browser, but if you plug it into DeX, it will reload the page in the same browser, but into a desktop format. And so if your page is relying on user agent test sniffing to do whether should I deliver a mobile web page or should I deliver a desktop shaped web page, then you'll probably end up delivering the mobile web page to a desktop browser. Whereas something that's been designed responsibly, something that's designed responsively will just work out the box because it doesn't care what device it's on. It just fits into a window. And there are so many different kinds of devices. I mean, I know I say this working with Samsung, but like there is a browser on our fridge. There's a browser on my TV. There's like browsers in my phone. There's a virtual reality web browser in my headset. Each one has like different formats. Like the one on my TV is like low resolution but big and far away, whereas the one in my headset is low resolution but literally an inch from my eyeball. And it's interesting how we've definitely moved beyond a two-device universe. Like the web can be anywhere on all kinds of things. I think I even saw a watch web browser like on one of the Samsung smartwatches the other day, which kind of blew my mind. Like it's the full web on a like a 1.5 inch screen. So it's definitely an interesting wide world of web browsers out there.
It just made me think too, like a lot of companies I've been at, they base their support for a browser on analytics, and a lot of the times the analytics will consist of the user agent, and the user agent doesn't necessarily tell you everything. So I think if we had awareness at that top level, you could have marketing people, analytics people coming to you as developers saying, "Hey, we noticed that there was a spike of revenue coming from this particular browser. Like how can we test for that?"
Yeah, like it'll be really. I think that'd be interesting, especially with like stuff like web payments and like Samsung Pay and stuff. Is that like all of a sudden it's like, oh, this modern browser which supports this new feature is driving huge amounts of revenue because the checkout process has become like a one click, I want this, buy kind of thing. And that's when like you might start seeing a lot of focus on getting users using browsers which support like web payments really well. So like I think we're in this weird situation where if I want to buy something on my phone, it's like 2 taps, or if I want to buy something on my desktop, I actually have to type out all my credit card details. So it's actually become easier to buy stuff on mobile now. So that's kind of interesting. Sorry, I kind of meandered there. Like,
No, all meandering is welcome. And yeah, we often meander here on this show.
It still
So
happens.
yeah, always. And so Ada, I think we don't have that much time left, and I really would like to kind of talk about the interop story for Samsung. And I think it ties nicely, I think, into this conversation of like awareness around testing and usage, and so more and more developers are just taking for granted that things should work the same, right? And then you get this bug, then you get a bug filed, this version of Firefox, like this thing looks horrible, like, and so there's this incredible project that my company is heavily involved with, called the Web Platform Tests Project, and it's an open source project where most browsers have come together and are now sharing tests. And this was an initiative started by Google, and it's a WC3 project. The project actually was part of the W3C organization on GitHub, and it just recently it has a new organization now that's just called Web Platform Tests. And so I know that like the Edge team is consuming these tests that they're not currently contributing, but I think everyone else, the WebKit team, Chrome, Firefox, that they're all actively contributing tests and sharing tests. And so the thought behind that is, hey, like if these tests are green for you, Firefox, you implemented the same spec that I did, but like, hey, this one test is failing for me. So we didn't implement it the same way, and the hope is that the bugs are kind of flushed out early, or very early in the before they kind of become full web standards. And of course, like things that are already standards are tested as well, but it's mostly like newer features at this point. And so I'm curious, like, if the Samsung Internet engineers are at least running the web platform test project. Are they contributing to it? You guys, what's the story there?
So I wish I knew. I'm pretty sure we consume the web platform tests. Like we use them to test our browser. But I'm not sure if we contribute to them or not. Unfortunately, the team that actually builds the browser is mostly based in Korea. So we don't see much about how they actually go around like making the browser itself. But I'm pretty sure that we do use them. But I think it's definitely something which we should look into contributing into, especially as developer advocates, as maybe something we should start looking to write some tests ourselves.
Yeah, and we should talk offline after this. Or want to get started, or I'd be really curious to hear about that. I guess in the same vein, there's a lot of contributions that are going on to the Chromium project, and I'm sure other open source libraries and SDKs. But are is Samsung heavily involved in the standards process as a whole? In community groups for the W3C or technical committees like the TC39 for JavaScript.
Yes, we're involved in quite a few standards bodies from the W3C. So my boss Daniel Applequist is on the tag. I'm in the immersive web community group, and I intend to be involved in the immersive web working group when that gets formed. We're involved in the web payments working group. We're involved in some more as well, and I can't remember which ones off the top of my head. But we've definitely got, like, being invested in standards is something which, like, we think is really important to us as a browser. Like you can't be a web browser and not be involved in the standards for at least the topics that you're interested in. So for our main goals, for like progressive web apps, VR payments, like that's the kind of and IoT, like they're the kind of standards we really look to get involved in. So yeah, on quite a lot of standards bodies, you'll find Samsung people. Yeah.
Having a lot of remote offices, like you said, London, and then you have in all the way Korea, there's a lot of opportunity for diversity. So like, I know that you're a huge advocate for diversity and for teams and in development. Can you talk a little bit about the story at Samsung with that?
All right, so I'm going to be honest here and go off the, like, so I tweeted out a few months ago a Samsung's diversity statistics, and they're not great, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
It could be a lot better. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like our team itself is like pretty good. But I would like to see better diversity throughout Samsung as a whole. But I mean, I like our team, like, within the browser. So so the VP in charge of the browser, Dr. Song, she is really incredible, and she has an amazing team. And there's there's good gender diversity there. But I would like to see better gender and racial diversity across the whole company. But the company is humongous, and I'm kind of one person. So I definitely think there is work to be done.
You can't fix all of the things. What's going on?
I try and fix all the things. I definitely do.
But it's definitely a hard thing to do for any company, small or big. So there is, I mean, just the fact that you're allowed to go out and talk and go to like speak at these things about it and be honest and open is a huge step forward, I think, for any company.
Well, like, I'm not sure how much trouble I'm going to get in for just admitting that on a podcast, but I think it's one of the things where someone shouldn't be shy about admitting where the problems are. And like, part of the issue lies, like, Samsung is a very big company. It's a very old company. And so, like, that's one of the areas where it takes a long time for, like, the boat to turn.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, could be better.
Well, we appreciate the honesty, and that enables us to move forward and allow more
Yeah.
transparency.
Like I like to think that by going up on stage and speaking and being like, yeah, like here I'm a successful woman in tech, spending my time speaking at conferences, representing the web, that other people can be like, that is something which is achievable and it's worth sticking around in this industry to actually like pushing through the often uncomfortable environment for minorities in tech to actually go out there and be visible. But yeah, I try and change the industry where I can for the better by leading by good example and trying to make the web a better place for people to work in and for people to want to join this industry when you don't have the privilege of looking like every other developer in the industry.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. Would it be appropriate if I started singing like a web version of Heal the World? Like, heal the web, make it a better place for you and for... No, I'm just kidding. So no, really, Ada, like this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. Being, I think, a woman of color in this industry. I think representation matters, and I think in particular, I think representation in like leadership matters, right? And so I'm really happy to hear that your team is. You said your developer advocacy team. You're pretty happy with the diversity level there. I'm happy to hear that because you're also like the face of Samsung in many ways to the tech community. So I think that's awesome. This is like a problem that's also not unique to Samsung. It's just like an industry-wide problem.
Yeah, it's just it's an industry-wide problem, and I kind of like I wish that I could point at my company and be like, look, Samsung are doing it right, but I think we have as much work as anyone else. But I think like given a lot of like I don't think the industry will move on if no one says anything. So as long as we keep talking about it and measuring it and seeing how it's changing for the better, then we can slowly make a difference as fast as we can.
Yeah. I think that's a great approach to that.
Yeah, no, it really is, and it's a great, I think, end to this lovely podcast that we've had, and thank you very much for your time, Ada. It's been a pleasure learning about Samsung Internet and hearing about your just the innovation around your browser and also some of the challenges as well. And so thank you. I want to ask my co-hosts, was there anything else that we'd like to ask Ada before we wrap?
No, not right now. I think this was all fantastic. Just like Amal said, Ada, thank you very much for spending some time
thanks
with
so
us.
much.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Like normally I go to conferences and I'll do a half an hour talk about some cool new web thing just for the 2 minutes at the start to talk about Samsung. So I really appreciate you inviting me on just to talk about the browser. Like it's really nice to see that people are like really taking notice, and that our work for getting people to test on our browser is really paying off.
Absolutely, and the name of our podcast, the Web Platform Podcast. Eric came up with this name. I think he had such a true vision, So we're very we like nerding out about the platform, and so it's not surprising that we're like, let's just talk about the browser, So it was really.
It's not just the technology, though; it's also the community. It's everything about the web.
Yes. Yeah, maybe we should add like a C, web platform and community.
The web platform and friends.
And friends, yeah, right. That would be nice. Like Sonic and Tails. But so I guess just really quickly, I think there's one thing we didn't mention. I think we mentioned it, I think, in passing, but I really wanted to just, what are the stats right now as of, I guess, this month or last month for usage? Because I think last time I looked a few months ago, it was over 300 million users, and that's a lot of users. So
Just a few.
Yeah, I wish. Yeah, let's take a look. So I was going to look on Stat Counter. So worldwide mobile, and then yeah.
We need like drum roll music.
Let's take a look. Worldwide, we're like. Oh no, there we are. We're actually higher than I thought. So we're 5% worldwide for mobile browsers, and in Europe we tend to be a bit higher. So let's just say like Germany or something. So like in Germany we're 13% of mobile browser usage.
That's huge. I mean, so just I mean, putting those numbers into context is just I can't even do that in my head. But any percent of the web is huge, especially in the single digits, and let alone double. So that's incredible. Congratulations to your team, and again, we're excited to follow your progress. And again, we've really enjoyed having you on our show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So with that said, where can people find you on the internet? Where can they follow you online? If they want to.
Yes. So I'm at lady_ada_king on Twitter. My personal website is ada.is, and you can find my team at samsunginter.net or at Samsung Internet on Twitter. Yeah,
I think that's like the coolest use of the .net.
Right, it's so good.
No, that's really neat. All right, well, that said, another episode of the Web Platform Podcast in the bag. We are excited to speak with you all next week, and we hope you have a webtastic day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.